you.
The title of my presentation this afternoon is Developing Disaster Resilience Through Science Education in St. Paul University, or SPCU. I will also discuss the role of epigenetic marker in resilience. St. Paul University is located at Metro Manila, and I belong to a senior high school department wherein most of my co-faculties have their MS degrees. In 1917 to 2018, we have 96 graduates. In 2018-2019, this year, we're optimistic that we are going to graduate about 261. This data is in contrast to only 12 graduates in 2016-2017. The Philippines is a beautiful country with its beautiful people. There are also a lot of underwater creatures, artful landscape, the beautiful smiles in the simplicity of life, pristine waters and beaches, the perfect cone volcano, and the cosmopolitan way of living. There are also mouth-watering foods from the seas, tasty fish to be shared. However, Philippines is the third riskiest country behind Tonga and Vanuatu. This is because of the natural disasters are frequently coming as a consequence of natural development. The Philippines has a high risk and vulnerability because there are 20 tropical cyclones in a year, earthquakes every day, more than 20 active volcanoes all over the country. So where is the Philippines? Here. The Philippines is here. And despite of our being small, there is a high risk of 27.66%. And our exposition, although we're very small and near other big countries, is 52.4% and vulnerability of 52.78%. Why this is so? Because aside from our location, it also determines how well our country is prepared during natural calamities. So the disaster risk is exposure to natural or man-made hazards in relation to vulnerability. So this is our country. What seems to be, because of those factors, what seems to be a beautiful beach at 1 minute, in 24 hours, Typhoon Haiyan came and there was a storm surge. As a consequence, several houses were broken, several trees were down. And this is for the extent of damage of Typhoon Haiyan. This is an aerial view to show the magnitude of the damage. So, if this is the case, what can be done? This is to educate the students through disaster readiness and risk reduction. By the way, this is the subject I'm teaching, and out of this, I develop a method wherein the students will be able to appreciate and apply disaster readiness. So, DRRR is multidisciplinary, which is biological, geophysical, sociocultural, political, and economic in natures. I will not discuss them because previous speakers have already discussed them in details. So, even without scientific inquiry, every Filipino is familiar with the impacts of typhoon, earthquakes, volcanic eruption, and fires. And to everyday life, the effect can be seen, including to the national development. So, what is hazard? As defined by Philippine DRR law in 2010. So, there are two types of hazards. One is natural hazard. Two is man-made or technological hazards. There is no such a thing as natural disaster or man-made disaster. There are only natural hazards and man-made hazards. So I will be showing some pictures from the students and permission were asked. So, here in our activity, I have an activity wherein the students will act out some man-made hazard. Here in this case, they are using cigarettes as man-made hazards and how it affects the health of the students. So how do we find hazard? Hazard is a dangerous phenomenon. It could be a substance, a human activity, or a condition that may cause loss of life, injury or other health impacts, property damage, loss of livelihood and services that has an impact to social, or it might have disruptions in the economy. So what is disaster? Disaster is a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society involving widespread losses and impact in human, material, economic, and the environment, wherein it exceeds the ability of the affected community to cope with its own resources. So, disaster is often described as a result of the combination of exposure to hazard, conditions of vulnerability that are present, and insufficient capacity or measure to cope with the potential negative consequences. So again, I have an activity for the students wherein they will act out a certain situation wherein they will not mimic the hazard but only the effect. So these are the students, apparently the victims of a disaster. So this can be seen by the limping, by some people who are crying. This is when they able experience and to act it out, it becomes a part of them. So this is activity. So there are several activities that I asked them to do. These are the rules of the game. And the most important thing here, the actors must represent what is happening to the living or non-living things caught in a given hazard. So another scene is for some exchange students in the barrio. So here there is a case of miscommunication between the exchange students and the local students leading to a disaster. So when does a natural event becomes a disaster? So here in this caricature, this is the hazard as a consequence of a rolling or sliding rock, and this is the person who is very vulnerable. When the rock hits the vulnerable person, there will be a disaster. However, even if the rock fell and it did not hit the person, there is no disaster. So meaning, even if there is a hazard and it does not hit a certain vulnerable person or other materials, there will be no disaster. So what is the relationship of hazard, disaster, and vulnerability? So when there is a hazard and there is a vulnerable population and there is no and the hazard does not affect the vulnerable population, there is no disaster. However, when the vulnerable population is affected by the hazard, there will be disaster. So how to reduce the disaster risk? So here is the exposure. This one is the vulnerability and the hazard. What is the variable? The The variables are the exposure and the vulnerability. So if you decrease the exposure, if you lessen the vulnerability, the disaster risk will be less and there will be no disaster that might take place. So, aside from this, what are other predisposing factors? These are the disaster risk factors. These are the variables that either aggravate or mitigate the effects of hazards affecting the degree or scope of a disaster. So these are the physical factors, psychological factors, sociocultural factors, economic factors, political factors, and biological factors. Again, I will not discuss them one by one because they have been discussed by other speakers. So, from this, I want to emphasize that there is a need for education of learners for the disaster readiness and risk reduction. So, why do we teach the DRR subject to the grade 11 students and not to higher years? First is to empower the youth who are the catalysts of change. Second, as I told them, you are the prime mover of change who will be soon the future leaders. So, one lesson that I have with them was identifying classroom hazards that can lead to disasters. So here, we will have an action plan. And as I told them, that there is a big role of school students in disaster management. So as a classroom so I asked them to prepare a classroom hazard map. And these are the action plans for classroom hazard management, identification of the hazards in the classroom, prepare a hazard map, prioritize the hazards, solutions, action plans, schedule of implementation. So the most important thing is the election of the ambassadors and secretaries and sustainability. So how do I ensure that the students will really work it out? So I asked them, I told them that it will be part of their grade 2 performance task, and at the same time, they will be the beneficiaries if the risk of disaster will be lessened. So this is the identification, the brainstorming. This is one section and another section. So you will see the different different personalities, how they did their brainstorming. Again, brainstorming. And then I asked them to present the results, and you see how creative they can be. And then presentation of the hazard map. Solutions to the identified hazards map. So, the most important, in my class, I observed that there was an increasing rate of absences, and they said they have allergies. So, I guide them to identify what are the reasons why they have it. So, one is they are fond of spraying perfumes inside the classroom, and I told them that these perfumes have allergens that cause them allergies or asthma. And another one is so there were a lot of activities, they were able to fulfill it, and one of the hazards we identified is stress and mental health. But I noticed in the end, they were not able to identify this, so I guide them how to do it. So I told them that one way of distressing for both the volunteers and the victims is through distressing. So they selected jamming. Jamming is the term used by the students today when they were singing. Okay. During the jamming, I observed that some students are very tense. They are holding hard on their pencils, and they don't mind at all their friends. But with the little interventions, when I encourage them to be a part, I notice that they are now singing loudly and they become a part of the team. And I also told them that one way that since I came from a private company, I told them now what is the reason that why you are studying. And I told them that one way that the employees of big companies is to do brainstorming, and that's what they like a lot. So after this activity, I have some observations. And these are my questions. Why is it that coping of one class is better than the other class? Why is it that the other class improved in their performance in the class? I observed that since I'm teaching chemistry, my students who have under me for DRRR and distressing had improved their grades. And why is it that the other class always exceeds the expectations and they became more creative and wants to have a better participation of each of the group mates? So, another question that came into my mind is what happened to the victim of the storm surge by Hailian. And I asked myself, shall I apply the same questions to those victims of storm surge and typhoon? So upon looking at searching, I found out that the Filipinos are resilient. After the storm, they find a sustainable development plan through planting of coffee and planting of cacao. And they start planting again. So the important word here, the big word here is resilience. So how do we find resilience? What are the most important determinants of resilience? And how are new technologies informing the science of resilience? And what are the most effective ways to enhance resilience? Before we understand first resilience, let's define first what is stress. Stress refers either to a stressful condition or the organism's response to stressful stimulus or the consequences of this response. Another important thing to understand is what is a stressor. A stressor is consistently used to denote the physical and the emotional challenges that threatens the individual's homeostasis. What is a stress response? Denotes the organism's behavior in the face of such challenges. So there's an important thing, the stressor and the response. Another word that is related to resiliency is allostasis. Allostasis is a holistic term to describe the process by which variations in internal function allow an organism to achieve stability in the face of constantly changing environments. This is important because most people, when they are jarred, when they are in very uncomfortable position, loses their stability. So, a stressor is a challenge posed by the environment. Stress response can be the molecular, hormonal, neural, or behavioral response that is evoked by a stressor. So, the stress response can be adaptive or maladaptive. So, when the response is adaptive, the person is resilient. When the response is maladaptive, that will lead to depression. So, what is a stressor? They found out that stressors that occur in the development have greater and more enduring effects than stressors that occur in adulthood. And then, that effects vary depending on stressor intensity, duration, and frequency. Meaning, if the stressors were encountered by an adult, it will be easier. However, if the stress happens in the childhood, it will be more traumatic and long-enduring. So, what are the kind of stress? There are acute intermittent stress that may be essential for the successful adaptation to changing natural and social environments. Mild to moderate stress may enhance cognitive and emotional learning via the induction of neural plasticity and adaptive remodeling of neural circuits, and might thus be a necessary component of learning and successful physical therapy. So meaning stress can be positive because it is one way of testing our stability and learning for situations that may be effective for us in the future situations. So, how about the chronic excessive stress? It carries a high risk of detrimental consequences. So, meaning if the stress is mild and acute, it is good. But if it is chronic, we have to take that into consideration that you have to find a way of stopping the chronicity of stress. So, as we said earlier, stressor is a challenge posed by environment. So now, I want to give a focus on the molecular response related to resilience. So the molecular level is known as the cytosine methylation or DNA methylation. This molecular notion is involves the persistence of cytosine methylation that act as evidence as a chromatin mark that could serve as a form of molecular memory on a behavioral time scale. It only means that if a certain part of your gene, particularly the cytosine, it is methylated, it becomes a mark. It becomes a memory. And DNA methylation is required for the extremely persistent or lifelong expression of gene transcription. It just means that there are a lot of metabolic processes going from the molecular, cellular to the biological level and up to the whole being of a person, which is called the phenotype that we see as we are on the outward. So, among the environmental stimuli that can change DNA patterns in the brain. And when various stress paradigms have been shown to decrease methylation of multiple genes are located in the hypothalamus parathyroid adrenal axis. It is the part of the brain that is responsible for several metabolic intermediaries. So what is a cytosine? A cytosine is one of the 4 bases of DNA. One is adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. So cytosine, this is the molecular structure of cytosine or DNA. And then, it is capable of methylation. Methylation is a form of CH3. And then, it attaches itself on the 5th position of this molecular entity. When that happens, there are certain stress response that will take place. However, it is also possible here is the methyl portion attached to the DNA cytosine. However, it is also possible that this part of the methylene can be removed by the process called methylation through the action of the enzyme demethylase, and it will come back to cytosine. So this reaction is very important during resilience and maladaptive adaptation. And so, this is what is called as the epigenetic marker for resilience, meaning the methylation of cytosine at its 5th position in this molecule. So let's differentiate between genetic and epigenetic. So in genetics, there is a certain point here. So this is a double-stranded DNA, which is bases. And then it's possible that there is a change in one of the bases. And there is a change in one base will lead to a change in a phenotype or an outward appearance. In the epigenetic, it is not the DNA which is affected, but one of the regulatory elements, which is not affecting the sequence of the DNA. That will also lead to a change in the phenotype. So, go on further. So, in genetic change, there are a sequence of DNA, and it is called a normal DNA, in comparison to epigenetic change, which is unmethylated. And then, the mutated DNA will change of one of the bases. So here, in this case, adenine will change to thymine. In the epigenetic change, this is unmethylated, and then the cytosine here are methylated, and this is now known as the methylated DNA. So this epigenetic change happens in the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal gland. So this change in the HPA axis of the epigenetic change is the HPA axis is a key regulatory pathway for coordinating organismal stress response. So this is one part of the lower studies that they found out that being resilient is located in the HPA axis. So related to this is they found out that glucocorticoid is also related to stress. It was found out in a certain study by McGowan that normal childhood abuse, and there's a normal childhood, they found out that there is an increased glucocorticoid mRNA and decreased methylation of a certain part of a gene. So meaning, without stress, we have an increased glucocorticoid and decreased methylation. However, if there is an abuse or stress, there will be a decreased glucocorticoid mRNA and increased methylation. So meaning, when there is an increased glucocorticoid, there will be a decrease, if there is an increased glucocorticoid, there will be a decreased methylation. If there is abuse or depression, there will be decreased glucocorticoid and increased methylation. So, again, adaptive is resilient. There will be a decreased methylation but an increased glucocorticoid. Maladaptive, there will be an increased methylation and a decreased glucocorticoid. So therefore, happy people, well-adjusted people have higher levels of glucocorticoid, and people that experience stress and abuse have lower glucocorticoid. So, with that, is it possible to develop a drug for maladaptive conditions? So this might be possible because it does not it does not affect the DNA, but it affects certain regulatory portion which might do not have an effect on the DNA. So meaning, according to these studies, being resilient is not passed on from one generation to another. Being depressive is not passed on from one person to another, or from a mother to a child. So it just so happens that there are some changes that takes place beyond genetics, and this is called an epigenetic condition. So therefore, glucocorticoid and methylation are known as the epigenetic markers of resilience. So, it leads us to a gene-environment interaction. So, is it possible that certain phenotypes or certain behaviors that we have, is it already our nature, or because we are nurtured this way? And then, is it possible in developing resiliency in affected individuals or communities? So based on the studies of glucocorticoid and DNA methylation, it is possible to do an intervention by developing a drug or changing the environment of a person. Okay. So another molecule in resilience is known as the human oxytocin. Human oxytocin is the first hormone that is a part of the one the baby will have this when the first milk will be given to the baby. So when the milk is given to the baby, there is a bonding between them, and it makes the baby happy. But several studies have shown that it is a feeling of, it is the molecule of love. Meaning, if you secrete it to you, if you have, for example, you see a certain person, you have a beautiful feeling, that means that there is certain oxytocin that is that secretes within you when you see that person, and probably that is love. So it might explain why we are attracted to a certain person and why we are not attracted to some other person. And so the secret of that happiness is human oxytocin. So, highlights and future directions. So after our small classroom hazard maps, classroom achievements, we will have student-led school watching and hazard marking based on our successes. And then, we also established the DNA methylation-dependent mechanism of stress, the identification of the and the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, parathyroid, adrenal axis, epigenetics as potential biomarker for resiliency in humans, and it might be a future study in the epigenetics of stress. So now, what's beautiful about this, that it is being resilient can be developed as a result of environment intervention. So with that, have a great day.
Thank you very much for the enjoyable talk, or the oxytocin generated into everybody.
So I think you are also creating an oxytocin.
That's right. Who would like to ask a question? Do we have a question from the second floor? Any questions?
They are stressed.
Good. They have not enough oxytocin.
Yes.
Oxytocin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Questions?
Angelica?
So, thank you very much for that very nice presentation.
Mr. Mike?
Thank you very much for that very nice presentation. And that reminded me of my another hat as a biochemist. Now, you talk about DNA methylation, and that reminded me, does it mean that now that stress and depression can cause cancer? Because I know that, when DNA, like cytosine, is methylated, it would now result to mispairing of the GC, no? If I remember it right, guanine and cytosine, adenine and thymine are the perfect pair. So if therefore cytosine would be methylated, the cytosine, the DNA methylation. Cytosine.
Yes.
The cytosine would be methylated, so that's DNA methylation. So that would result to cancer because of the mispairing of the DNA. So does it follow now that the stress, the depression, can lead to cancer?
As I said earlier, epigenetics is different from genetics. Genetics, at the genetics level, this is where mutation will take place. But the epigenetic level, there will be no mutation. It is just an addition of a methyl group on the fifth position of the benzene ring of the cytosine.
That's why there is demethylation. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes. So, cancer is a different mechanism, and cancer formation, carcinogenesis, is dependent on where it is located and the mechanism on how they are formed.
Yes, Rekha, please.
How refreshing to listen to someone trained in chemistry and biology to talk about resilience in childhood from a biological perspective. And I also want to share with you about, since you were in San Francisco, about the work of Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton is graduate from Stanford University, and he actually gave up his career there to work on epigenetics. And right now he's well known in the area of energy psychology, which is one that I embrace, that we are conducting research into how the hormone of love, that's exactly how you coded it, it's changing the way we think, how we heal, how we resolve problems, when we think that it is not from an inherited standpoint, that genes do not explain all the story, and they don't have, genetics don't have all the history of why we contract certain diseases or not. Like you said, not passed from generation to generation. It is the environment. So I love the way that you brought it in as a health concern, as resilience, because we are learning how to expand and look at humans from a different perspective. And definitely environment and genetics is the way to look at it, and epigenetics. So thank you so much. It's just a comment more than a question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions, anybody? Do you have some comments now?
Limitations in studying epigenetics. Epigenetics is a very difficult method, unlike at the level of genetics, because in genetics there are a lot of techniques known as the polymerase chain reaction and other technologies. But in epigenetics, it is a new technology and it's hard to collect samples.
Do you think students have we can measure epigenetics of before examination stress? How much time is required for epigenetic modification? I learned that maybe if I move to a completely different environment, maybe 6 months is required. How much is the minimum time?
Since it's a new topic, we still do not know what are some factors that will induce or increase the rate of DNA methylation. And what are the conditions that will facilitate this, and what are the conditions that will lead to the removal of methylation. The removal of a methylene group from the cytosine is very physical. It's a weak bond catalyzed by an enzyme called demethylase. So it is something physiological and not affected by any physical or chemical reactions. But something beautiful about this is that depression is not transmitted from a parent to a child.
I have an observation.
Yes, Leonora?
Yeah. Basically, the oxytocin is also used during childbirth. When a woman is having a child, during labor, oxytocin is given so that the child comes out quickly.
The doctor here can explain very well
But it's also
oxytocin is released from the mother.
Yeah, but oxytocin is given and it's approved in Bangladesh to be given during childbirth, so that the labor is and there's also some sort of connection between the mother's feeding and the ability to actually wear the contractions.
I'm talking about the natural oxytocin. What she's saying about the pharmacological oxytocin.
I am not a pharmacologist, but I can say that hormonal basis of love is important, and last years many scientists, especially physiologists, study on it. The hormonal basis of love and also mothership, and it is I think in a few years in future we will learn hormonal basis of love, and also some loving behavior of us to each other. Oxytocin is one of them, and many aspects of oxytocin is not known.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true. But it is used in Bangladesh
Yeah.
at the field level when the difficult labor is coming. But you know that the baby is in the normal position, then giving the oxytocin
Yeah.
makes the
Yeah.
baby come faster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like some come? Thank you.
It is
Okay.
a difficult issue. Yeah, please.
The pharmacological oxytocin is different from a natural oxytocin.
Yeah.
A natural oxytocin is the one that is secreted by the mothers when they start to lactate.
Yeah.
When the baby is born, there is a certain messenger going to the brain telling that the baby needs milk. So when that hormone reaches secreted in the HPA axis, oxytocin will be released and milk will be secreted. And when that's secreted, part of the milk contains oxytocin, and that oxytocin binds. There's a bond between the mother and the child.
That's right. But because of the
Yes.
And relaxation agent,
Yes.
oxytocin.
And that is why she relaxes.
Okay, yeah.
And the contractions, she can bear the contractions. and
The
baby
bond.
comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they call it love.
One question.
Thank you.
Question.
About oxytocin. Is oxytocin synonymous to the happy hormone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are now different kinds of happy hormones. One of the happy hormones is oxytocin. There is another A hormone that is responsible for a happy hormone. There are another, when person are depressed, there is another hormone known as serotonin. So when you have low levels of serotonin, that means you have a tendency to be always sad.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I think
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you very much, Nora.
Oxytocin tablets.
So we should say the song "All You Need Is Oxytocin" and serotonin and love. Thank you very much, Nora. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.